Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston subdivision in HO scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for a brand new episode, an update that's been a long time in coming. It's been almost a month since the last update, and today's update features plaster and rock molds on the Evanston sub at Echo Canyon. So we're getting back to it, and we're getting back to it in an area that's going to be pretty spectacular, I hope. It's Echo Canyon, which is a pretty interesting and beautiful canyon in Utah. It's going to be one of the signature scenes of this layout, and I'm hoping that it turns out the way I want it to be. But before we get to all that, just have a quick commercial for some things I have for sale on my Square site. The location, or the URL, is in the description. I have some Soundtrax Tsunami decoders, OEM decoders for sale, some Autoracks for sale, and even a couple of locomotives, SD 90 Max in Union Pacific, of course. So if you're interested in those, check the description, go to the site, and can purchase whatever you would like to have for your layout. All right, here's where we started. It's been like this for quite a while. I took a break, went on vacation, did some fun things, but I am definitely back at it and ready to move forward with this area. Now, of course, I wanted to emulate the Echo Canyon, and it was quite a challenge because I'm constricted quite a bit on the amount of space in depth and in height. Since I have a second level right above it, restricts the height, and then of course the width is also restricted. Here's what everybody thinks of, I hope, when you think of the Echo Canyon: these big, huge rock formations. You can see the double track main line right there below it with the road. Now these are huge. There's no way I could put these anywhere near the correct size or the prototypical size on the layout. So I actually, this is the view from a rest area that's in that area. So I'm instead doing an area where the rock formations are not quite so huge. And these are some pictures I took along, this is between Emory and Echo. And you can see the rock formations are not quite as big. And so this is what I'm trying to emulate on the layout. And these are some good pictures. This is also the color I'm going to try and do. And I'm definitely having the main track, the double track main line, and then the road that goes alongside it, and then the rock formations. Here's looking in the other direction. Now this will be off the layout. This is a great picture, mainly for being able to see the color. Now the color depends on what picture you're looking at and what time of day, if it's cloudy or sunny. So it's not like this is the absolute perfect color. But the ones from these photographs that I took on a mostly sunny day. Here's some history, by the way, I came across. And here I enlarged it for you. If you want to pause it there and read it, it's pretty interesting. There was a Utah war between the Union and the Mormons. Didn't last very long and was peacefully settled, I guess. But here you can see some of the vegetation. I probably won't have. This was taken in early spring, so this had not yet budded, and I think for the rest of the year it's probably not this dead-looking color. So I'm not going to try and have that particular. I will have some vegetation, but it's going to be green for the most part. Now, one thing is the depth. Not only is the height going to be a problem, but the depth, those rock walls go back a long ways. And I quickly realized there's no way. I only have like maybe 18 inches, if that, between the track and the backdrop. So I knew I was going to be definitely restricted on the depth as well. But here's my attempt to try and get it done on the layout and have it look something like the actual Echo Canyon. I have the masking tape on the track, which was a great idea. Definitely recommend it because it's really messy. Here's the little trough I'm using for the plaster gauze, which I got some from Amazon. This is what I use to cut the plaster gauze. And this is what I'm doing here. Now I used 12 rolls of plaster gauze, and they were the 8-inch wide, and I think they were like 15 feet. Now I've also then in some of the sections here I've also painted it. Then I put the plaster gauze down first, and then I paint it with a 50-50 mixture of plaster. And you can see the difference here is not without the painted plaster, and here's with the painted plaster. Just gives it some added stiffness, and you don't have the pattern of the gauze there. Also, oops, made a little splash there. One thing you really have to be careful, and especially if you have the backdrop in place, there's always a question: should I put the backdrop in first and then do the plaster, or should I do the plastering and put the backdrop in last? And putting the backdrop in last is very, very difficult to do. It's hard to get it back behind all the plaster work and everything. So I've been kind of leaning towards putting the backdrop in first. Here you can see the junction between the done scenery and the new plaster. But anyway, I think it works out better to do the plastering second, and put the backdrop in first, and then just be careful and clean up the backdrop as best you can. And what you can't clean up, you can hide with trees. Get a good look at kind of how the track is going to look going through the scene. So definitely have the track, the road, and then the rock formations. So definitely have that looking pretty good. And I don't have the rock coming right up to the road, although it does in a few places. But for the most part, it's not coming right up to it. It's kind of a little slant going up to the vertical sides where the rock molds are going to go. And then there'll be some rocks back and behind it here. You can see some more of the splashes I made. Most of them were pretty easy to clean up. Although I made even more splashes when I put the rock molds in. Here you can see again the shell that's formed. Kind of wanted to try to make it extra tough near the edge. Don't have to worry about it back where you have to reach. You can kind of see here. That's going to have rock molds, which will give us some strength too, but you're not going to have anybody leaning on that area back on the other side of the tracks and road. It is pretty stiff, although when you spray it to get it wet for the rock molds, it does soften up a little bit. But it's this area here right along the fascia where people might put their hands or elbows. Hopefully they're smart enough not to put their elbows on there and lean on it, but, if you have a lot of people over, somebody's going to do it. Or, more likely, I'll forget, and I'll do it, which has happened, although I haven't damaged anything yet. But there are a couple areas that have been pushed in a little bit. So this is with just the plaster on. Plastering is very messy. But I definitely prefer it over using styrofoam, which is also extremely messy. And you do have to use plaster for the rock molds unless you want to do some carving of the styrofoam to make it look like rocks, which I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that. On the screen, you can see where I've got these rock molds from. They're very detailed and they work extremely well. They're huge. I got the biggest ones. I ended up cutting the edges off so that it laid a little more flat. It kind of curls up around the edges. And some of these I also cut them smaller. I got 2 big ones and one that was kind of medium size. This is a huge one. But on both of these, I cut the edges off so that here's some very thin ones I got from Mark Bridgewater. I'd like using those for just some rocks on the ground that show through the vegetation. But again, I cut the edges off the rock molds so that that wouldn't interfere. And here you can see I started to do some planning on what I was going to put where and so forth. And I decided on the little slanted area between the road and the vertical section, I'm just going to put some rocks, glue some rocks down on that area. I'm not going to use the rock molds. I'll use some leftover pieces from the rock molds on that area, but I was planning on having this kind of go in some areas it would go on the top, and then some areas it would not go up to the top, and I want to go on the sides a little bit. I want to have some variety, basically, of different things. Sorry this camera is moving so fast, but I was actually just kind of thinking this through while I was videotaping, trying to do a little planning on what's going to go where. I thought about putting this type of rock down, and I might still do that. Have to look at the pictures again some more, or maybe put one of those. Again, I was just kind of thinking through where things were going to go. Here I do have the first rock mold on there, and I put some batteries and my spray bottle with some water in it to hold it down on top. The rock molds are the molds themselves are very nice, but they're kind of stiff, and so they don't go over angles and so forth real well. So you have to kind of hold it for a while. But I still might put some rock molds on the slant area. If I do, I might use Mark Bridgewater's. I did put Mark Bridgewater's there in the little valley there. But I think I might put some on this area in between the road and the rock molds. But I think these look pretty good. Usually when I pull the casting off, some of the pieces would break, and so I glued them back on in different locations. But I think it's going to look pretty good. I'm pretty fairly excited about how this is going to look. The key is going to be getting the color right. So that's what I'm going to be doing this next week, is putting any last rock molds on and then painting everything. I think I'm going to use this yellow ochre and then this red sienna, because it's kind of some pictures it looks yellow, some pictures it looks red, and it's kind of in between the two. So I'll probably use those two in black or gray, and then use black for the final. I'll have to look some more. Here's a good, that rock, 2 different pictures of rock, and it looks different. I had some, when I glued some of the rock pieces on, I put a little bit too much glue and it's dripping down. That's not good, because the paint won't adhere to that. So that's not good. But here when I was doing the rock mold, I made a huge boo-boo there, and the mold went up onto the backdrop. I was hoping maybe I could get that off. I decided to let it dry before trying to get it off. Again, this is a very messy undertaking, but it's what you have to do to get the end results. Now here's what I did to remove the mistakes. You can see some of the overspray and so forth. Now some of it, if it's close to the mountain, you can cover it up with vegetation. I need to glue that little corner back up too. Now you only see these the top of the backdrop if you're like 5'6" or shorter. But definitely needed to try and get that off. I used my scale ruler that I got from Lombard Hobbies. Very useful tool. But a putty knife, just some of the small pieces come off. That one just dropped off on its own. So if you let it dry, you're better off just waiting until it dries and then kind of use something like this, a straight edge or a putty knife. Putty knife would probably work better than this. I'm doing this with one hand, holding the camera with the other, so not the best situation. Again, the Lombard Hobbies scale ruler worked fine. You can still see it if you're right up to it, but if you back off, it becomes pretty invisible. This here, as you can see, I tried to take it off. Nope, it did not work. Got a big hole in there. So that did not work at all. But this is kind of how it turned out. Again, you have the wholesome cement area. Kind of have to imagine some trains coming through here. Once I get it all painted, and so on. I think it's going to look pretty cool. Again, this is when you see the top of the backdrop, that means you're about 5'6" or shorter. We do have some operators that I think are that short. I'm 6'2", so it's not a problem for me. And here's trying to get some more off. You can see where I tried on that hole there. Big, huge mistake. Got most of it off. I think I'll be able to cover up whatever's left with vegetation of some sort. Have a wire there that I need to take care of too. All right, I did have some leftover pieces. Some rock molds didn't work right. They set too soon, so I just let them set all the way. And have some big pieces. I'll probably use these for practice on the painting. And then I got some bigger pieces or some smaller pieces here. I kind of separated them out to big pieces, medium-sized pieces. You can see one side is a rock face, the other side is a plaster face. Here's the small sizes. So I separated those out, and I use them different places to kind of glue in where it broke off. Now here's an example that there's an empty space there. That's going to be a problem, and then here also now. The reason it's going to be a problem is because here you have a slant, but there it's vertical. So slant, that will be fine because the grass and foam will go on here. This is vertical. It'll be almost impossible to get any vegetation to stick on there unless I glue it piece by piece. So here you can see I went ahead and just took some pieces out of my buckets and glued them in so that all the vertical sides, you really have to have some rocks on them, otherwise they won't look right. All right, so that's how far we got. Actually was quite a bit of work. I spent one day doing the plaster gauze, and then I spent 3 days doing the rock molds. The rock molds was pretty time consuming. Probably did the work over 3 days, but probably in all about 8 hours of work to get that. Here, this is the stack train coming out of Morgan, heading eastbound towards Evanston, going across the Weber River here. These are these are international stacks. This is going through the Taggart Tunnel. This is all the work that I've done up to this point. This was a lot of work in this area, but I think it turned out pretty cool. Going across the Weber River a second time. And then under the I-84 interstate. You see Devil Slide rock formation there in the background. Some spectators watching the trains. If you ever been at these Taggart bridges, at the Taggart tunnels, there is an area there that you can watch all this. And here we're coming into the Wholesome Cement area. There's the siding there at the Devil Slide control point, and then going over the Weber River a third time, and then you have the spur going into the Wholesome Cement facility, and of course the two bridges going across the Weber River, and then we come into Echo and Echo Canyon. So this little and you have the road that you can see coming alongside it. This little wood area here is going to be Echo. There'll be a little hotel and gas station there, cafe. And then this is going to be Echo Canyon. I think it's going to turn out pretty good. It's kind of hard to get the massiveness of the rock formations in the limited amount of space. Would have been easier if I did not have a second level at this area, but I think it's going to turn out pretty good anyway. And then the road goes off the layout and then reappears between Echo Canyon and Emory. Yeah, these are international 40 feet. Most of them are 40-foot containers. There's a few 45-foot. And there's a DPU, SD70 ACE. On our trip to Arizona, I took a road trip all the way to Arizona. Saw tons of trains through New Mexico and Arizona. I think I must have seen about 30 trains while we're traveling. And here we're coming in the other direction. This is a stack train. Now this is all the way close to the Wasatch control point, which is the top of the Wasatch grade. Yeah, we're going downgrade here. We're at ethanol train. These are a couple of, I should say it's a AC 4400 and SD70M, I believe. I'm not sure how you can hear or not, but I put the dynamic brakes on, and you can hear the prime movers go into idle, and then it puts the into the dynamic brakes. It actually is a it's either SD59 or SD60. It's not a SD70. Pretty sure it's a SD59-2. It was one of those rebuilt models. Also by Athearn. The lead unit is an AC 4400 by Scale Trains. You can see it coming down, and you can hear the dynamic brakes. It also, with a dynamic braking on, and I have it set so that it slows down to 20 miles per hour. It was going 25. With the dynamic braking, it slowed to 20 miles per hour. This is a Castle Rock area. This was the very first area of scenery that I did. Mark Bridgewater helped me with this. I think I might put some black, diluted black on that rock work there. Needs some more, a little bit more relief to it. Man, this is the last bit of scenery for me to do yet. Once I get the Echo Canyon part done, this is Emery Control Point. So only about 16 feet of scenery left to do on the entire layout. Now, of course, I'll go back around everything a second time and do details on the scenery. Things like the maintenance road crossings, touching up any of the ballast that wasn't quite right or has cracked, and buildings being built or completed, and then all the details on the buildings done. So it'll be good to get the basic scenery all done, the messy part of it, and it'll be fun to put the details on. It's going to look pretty cool. Sorry this is kind of shaky here. Wanted to get some shots of it coming through Echo Canyon. I think it's going to turn out pretty good. Of course, between doing the finishing the basic scenery and then working on the detailed scenery, I'm going to be weathering all the equipment. That's going to be a huge task, but I definitely want to get that done. Been trying to design a way I can get my operating crew to come over and we can get some something going with multiple people working on weathering. Get an assembly line of some sort where one person removes the wheel sets, another person's make sure the wheel sets have a resistor that works in the proper resistance, someone to actually be using the spray booth to lightly weather each one, and then someone to put the wheel sets back on, maybe a person to do some detailing and so forth, but definitely looking forward to that. Next week we get some color on everything and hopefully some vegetation. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great week. Take care.